Happy Saturday. Got a fun live stream for you today. We got short season John back, and we're going to talk probably a little bit about everything. We're going to discuss some of the monuments, the remnants of the old world in America, and amongst many other topics about the short season and just general Christian life. So I really appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Welcome to the show, and welcome to the show, John. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great, JT. How are you? It's good to see you again. Congratulations on the on the official sponsor. That's pretty cool.
Yes, dude. Thanks for bringing that up for me. Yeah. So yeah, I got sponsored recently by Modern Roots Life, and I'm gonna put a link in the description if you guys want to check that out. Christian company. My friend who I met through that company. It's a Christian owned company, family owned company, and they provide natural health supplements like kind of detox stuff, beef tallow, beef liver pills, kind of all the healthy natural things that possibly you can use to avoid the doctor. I'm not saying you won't have to go, but you might not have to. And so, yeah, it's really cool that I can endorse something that I'm actually using and trying to be healthy and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, Modern Roots Life, guys, check it out. And it's very cool that if you can support the people who support me, that'd be a great benefit to everybody. So, thanks for bringing that up, John.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I remember I was talking to my wife and we were talking about Barbara O'Neill. I don't know if you ever watched Barbara O'Neill videos, but she's former nurse, and she usually talks about, hey, as an example, the numbers for like blood pressure or cholesterol in the 1950s versus what they are now. So it's almost like the goalposts have been moved to
Uh-huh.
put you into a category where you're sick, where you're going to need these meds and you're going to need to do something now. And so she's always saying, hey, you should really change the kind of salt that you intake. And so
Yeah, they sell the
one of
natural
the
salt.
things that are there,
I just started doing that every day, every
yeah.
morning. Yeah, I know.
And she basically said, like, you sweat out salt. Your tears are salt. You need salt in your body, and you need the right kind of salt, right? And so we had
Yeah.
a video I watched where she talked about salt production, and the way that they do it in industrial way versus just getting salt from a good source, and a good mixture. So it's cool to see all the stuff that they have on there. There's actually some good stuff that I would actually use myself.
Y-
um,
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because I have a little bit of a sports background. And so when I was doing all the endurance sports and even like the weightlifting and stuff like that, that was probably just for vanity. And then the endurance stuff, it was funny because if you got in my head about why I did it, so everyone would say, "Oh, you like to run, so you're trying to have like a healthy heart." It's like, no, I didn't care about that. I
right.
was really just trying to be competitive. But it is interesting, like when you learn about sports science and like what makes the body more efficient. I was really just trying to do whatever would shave a couple minutes or seconds off a race. So that was my goal. My goal was to not be healthy, was to compete. But then so after I got injured, and I still like to work out, but I mean it's easy when you're not really trying to hit that peak performance, like which you won't care about. Like, I don't stretch, I don't warm up anymore. I just go get right through. You just have this amount of time to do it.
Yeah.
But when I was trying to eat and drink and do all the things to perform well and to recover and all that stuff, it's like, yeah, it really it's harder to concentrate on doing that stuff as like as you don't play sports anymore. You're just an adult. But I mean, I have been way more conscious of just being in this community, being like, I think when I was first got on TikTok, so obviously I was talking about end time stuff and all kinds of weird stuff and
Yeah.
conspiracies. And then I had all these other people tell me about the food ingredients and all this stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like, this is the rabbit hole that I don't even want. This is the conspiracy that I don't want to be real, because it was a lot of the foods I ate. And like, I would just want protein, right? So like, it doesn't matter, right? So you get beef, you get chicken. But then I was like, I didn't even know what organic even meant back when I was doing all that stuff. And then I started to realize, do you really want all that stuff pumped into the chicken you eat? The grass fed versus like the corn fed. And then yeah, so now, like my wife now tries to get us the raw milk, does not buy beef that's not grass fed. and you pay more, but maybe it's like it's an investment in the future, because it's like you eat all that GMO crap. It's like, how much is it going to cost you at the doctor one day? And
Yeah,
I am thinking, like, because I don't even know, like, like when you have brain fog and you're just not feeling right, it's like, how much of that is natural and how much of that is what we ingest? And so, yeah, so I mean, it is cool to try this. I'm talking to them about how, like, what regime should I do to try to be, because I do like to still work out. I want to be healthy working out. I want to be active. I like to go hiking. I want to do all the boots on the ground stuff and national parks and seeing meltology and seeing old world stuff. I mean, even when we went to DC last year, my wife and I walked almost 14 miles, like when we were doing that. So, like, you have to be able to, in order to see all this stuff, I want to be able to experience and do all the research and just not feel like crap. So, so like,
yeah.
it's cool that I have this opportunity to do that now.
Yeah, this is you were talking before we got on. You and your wife do a lot of traveling, and my wife does a lot of international travel, and I think one of the things that I love the most about traveling to anywhere overseas is the food and how clean it tastes. Right, there doesn't seem to be anywhere near the level of preservatives that they have here. We went to Italy and had lunch for pasta for lunch, and I didn't feel like I was bloated and I was weighted down and I needed to go take a nap. And I looked up a lot of stuff that's in the EU, and they actually have like lab tests to show that there aren't any chemicals or anything inside of their food. And it's like, it's really odd that here it seems that there's a regulatory agency that makes sure that those things can be there.
I
And
know.
and in this short season mindset that I've now been in, isn't it interesting that if you do want to eat healthier, you talked about it, you can't even just go buy raw milk at like a grocery store, but it will cost you more, right?
Yeah,
So
you have to.
unless you have the means, you will be poisoned. Like, this is the way it's going to be.
Yeah, well, it's like, well, that in Virginia, you like I think I said you had to have a license. Well, you don't really technically have to have a license, but it's like you have to buy a share of the cow. It's like everybody owns part of the cow in order to get the milk out of it. It's kind of like, sounds like a loophole. I
Really?
mean, it's ridiculous. And what you just said about Europe, I think that was the thing that really tripped me out when I first learned that if you just get like a box of Quaker oats, and then so if you go look at the box in Europe, it says it has oats and
Oats?
salt. I think it's like oats and salt. It might be like those two. It might be 2 or 3 ingredients. And then you look at the box in America, and it's got a bunch of things you cannot
Can't even
pronounce.
pronounce. You don't even
So
know
you're
what
like,
it is.
so what is that? I mean, I think likely most of it's preservatives and things like that. But yeah, like I saw that, I was just like, so why do we have a health agency that lets them put stuff like that in there when theirs does not? I mean, it's kind of like the capitalism gone mad, or maybe, I mean, or it could be more nefarious. It's like literally they're just trying to like poison us.
The conspiratorial mind side, and it's interesting. Like, I was going to ask you, and I've asked other people before, like, do you think you have to be a little bit conspiracy minded to get down this path of the short season, the little season? Because a part of me feels like all of this stuff kind of matches up, where this is maybe how it would be. You would be in a situation where people would tell you that things are good for you, only to have you wind up getting sick so that they could profit from that sickness. I remember the first time somebody told me about seed oils, and I had no idea what they were talking about. I was like, "What do you mean a seed oil?" Right? This
Right.
guy,
Yeah.
I think his Twitter handle was like "seed oil disrespecter," and I was like, what does
Seed
that
oil
even mean?
disrespect. Yeah.
What does that even mean?" And then I started going down this path of, these are industrial lubricants. These were used as part of the Industrial Revolution for machines, right? Like, you and I are not supposed to consume these oils in any way, shape, or form. It's really not good for us. And there's plenty of stuff with mice, and it clearly it doesn't turn out on the good end for those who are consuming it, right? So it's wild that it is this way. And I've heard a lot of people comment who've come from Europe here and they've eaten food and they're like, it just tastes like chemicals.
Or yeah, they can't. Yeah, I know that one of my wife's one of her colleagues, yeah, she can't eat certain types of foods here because it wrecks her stomach, and she's from Great Britain, and it's like, but yeah, I want to go back to something you said. Maybe we can shift gears here a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the interesting part the question you asked was, do you have to be a conspiracy theorist to believe we're in the short season? I would say yes, I kind of think you do. I do kind of think you are, because if you could be way less conspiratorial where you just go under the wide umbrella of like partial preterism, which I actually do believe. Like, I know a lot of people in the community don't like that term. I'm willing to embrace it. I think that, I mean, from the way I understand partial preterism, it means you believe some of the prophecies have been fulfilled, not all. Obviously, full preterism means everything's been fulfilled. So I really feel like that what the little season community is, it's partial preterism with some receipts. We actually we don't need to allegorize certain things because we actually do find physical evidence throughout history. We find stuff in the historical record that fits with the prophecies. So we are not trying to allegorize things or make things symbolic that are not. We have real evidence that physical things happen, like again, the judgments that happened in the first millennia, like with the Gunnar Heinzen research. But so, but you have to be conspiratorial to, I think, to even look at that, to go find that information.
Right.
So that's why, like, conspiratorial people will read Matthew 24. They'll find out about what Josephus said in the antiquity, or not the antiquity of the Jews, but the Jewish-Roman War, and they'll say that, okay, that fits. So if he said that, he must have meant that time, and clearly this is evidence of it. And then so when people ask them, what about all the other things? Oh, well, that's spiritual.
Right.
You know, they would start to say certain things don't make sense. Actually, somebody even said, I was even talking to my one buddy, and they were talking about amillennialism. So amillennialism, believing that you're in the millennial reign.
Right.
Sorry, I got this. These dogs are.
Yeah, no worries.
Sorry, no, but I was, it's funny because I was kind of there's amillennialists and postmillennialists that would either believe we're in the millennial reign or we're after the millennial reign. And they still believe like Jesus is going to come back and then the resurrection's later. And I remember actually kind of pinning my buddy down on that. I was saying, okay, so do you guys believe there was a resurrection? No, they don't believe that there's not a resurrection until afterwards. And I said, but if you believe we're in the millennial reign, here's where it says in Revelation chapter 20 that if you believe the millennial reign started, it starts with the devil being put in a pit and the saints being resurrected so they can reign. Right. That's the first resurrection. So if you say we're in it or after it, you'd have to admit that the resurrection. So I was like, you guys are not consistent in what you're saying. Like Jason Jack said, I feel like that the little season interpretation is the most faithful to where we're at. Because yes, we have to say, like, well, I mean, it's kind of like in the way that when I've tried to explain Matthew 24, and if I try to explain it to the normies, the one thing that it would make it easier for me to explain is if Jesus didn't say he was going to come back in the events of Matthew 24.
Right.
But he wraps it into all these things will be fulfilled before this generation. So if I say that I believe him, then I have to say that, yeah, he came back then. And then, so then you go into, if I believe we're in the millennial reign or after it, well, then I would have to believe that the first resurrection has happened. But I feel like that maybe those people is it not because are they trying to be too not conspiratorial enough? Or, is that, do you think that that's where the real line is? That they're not conspiracy theorists, so they don't want to deny that?
I guess it's like, I remember I did a video, The Lie of Omission, and all the eschatologies. This is not one of the things that gets taught, no matter what. No matter which one it is, there's nothing about the short season that really gets focused on. So I think it's maybe half, you know, it's half conspiracy, and whether or not you've actually taken the time to just question whatever the narrative it is that you've been given, right? So we've all been given narratives about tons of things in history. And when it comes to this eschatology, you have to actually question whether or not you're in the right time. And so I guess there is this element of you have to have a little bit in your mind where you're wondering, is this a conspiracy? Um, am I not being told the right thing? And could we all be wrong? Because I think I was like really surprised at the amount of people who did not know what I was talking about. It almost seemed like this was some weird thing that I had come up with that they had never heard. But sure enough, it is there. And so, you can't really get around that. And I think that, the other thing really, the seven churches thing that you went over in that video, right? When I look at like St. Peter's Basilica, or I look at any of these, pick a cathedral in the US, right? Anywhere. You can pick a cathedral anywhere in the world. You can go there and there's going to be service going on tomorrow. So, I would expect the seven churches that John is writing to be just like any of the other churches where like they're waiting to do service, but yet they had to be excavated and dug out. And it seemed like, the meltology thing that you were talking about, right? So you kind of have to say, well, there's this evidence that's there. There's physical evidence. These are places that he was writing to, right? And if those places, you get on a plane, you can go see them. How does that line up with the whole timeline that we're being told if those places are not here, right? It's there's just too many things that there's a lot of things that are there in scripture that physically are supported, right? Like they are real things in real places. And so, maybe that's part of it is questioning stuff. I mean, I do remember in 2003 when we said that we were going to Iraq for weapons of mass destruction. And here it is 22 years later, and we still haven't found any.
They're gonna find them soon.
They're gonna find them any day now, right? Like they're probably gonna find them. But honestly, I think that it's like the preponderance of evidence of things that we have been lied to honestly makes me question everything. And maybe that's just, it's not an easy place to get to, because I don't think a lot of people think to themselves, how many things from the 60s are we not able to do today? And the only thing that's really in that category is space travel.
Oh, you mean as far as going backwards in technology?
Right. I mean, like, think about something today that if it were done in the 60s, you'd have a problem doing today. That list is not that big, right? I mean, it's
the one thing they're lying about. It's the only thing we can't do.
So you mean to tell me that, you guys did it however many times in a row, you figured out how to do it then with less processing power than an iPhone, and we somehow just can't figure out how to do it again? So stuff like that really, it piques my interest, where I think most people don't have time, or they just don't care about thinking about it. It's, what is it going to do for me to worry about this thing, right? Or what is it going to do if it's a conspiracy? What can I do about it? Where I would just rather know the truth, right? I think that's kind of like where, and maybe that's where the short season comes in, is you just want to know what the truth is about it.
These dogs are being belligerent today.
Is it a squirrel at least, or is it?
I don't know. I mean, these dogs are idiots. I said that's why we've gotten cats recently. We still got the dogs, but if we could get a trade in on a dog. No, but that being said, no, I think you're correct. I feel like I said I just watched The Matrix again, and I know these analogies are overdone, but I mean, I really do feel like it's kind of like, I really like that. And this might be a preview. If I ever actually make the 20 to 30 minute short season video that I want to make, I probably would start it like that, with the Morpheus things. Like, there's something wrong with this place, and you can't really define, you can't really put your finger on it, but you just know there's something wrong. And then it's kind of like, do you want to know what's wrong? Here's the blue pill. Take the blue pill. The story ends. You can wake up in your bed and you believe whatever you want to believe. Or you take the red pill, and we're going to go down the rabbit hole, and we're going to just see how just deep it goes. And I feel like that's where, like, we've all been presented that, with like this idea of like, man, they're lying about this. And then some people would say, give me the blue pill. I'll eat the fake steak. I'll enjoy the Matrix.
Yeah.
But us in this community, it's like, depending on what your wake up moment was, mine was 2020. Some people's was 2001, 9/11. Some people's somewhere in between. But those are the really big ones for people. And I feel like that's where, yeah, I just stopped trusting everyone at that point. I literally, everyone that I knew, I no longer could trust anymore. And so I really was like, I'm going to trust you fully, God. And then I'm going to look into all the things. And obviously, it's not like I wasn't aware of conspiracies before. I just was like, I don't got time for that.
Right.
What does it matter? Why do I need to know? Because I'm over here trying to grind out a living. I'm trying to accumulate all the things, all the stuff in the world. I'm trying to do the steps like everyone told me to do. And then one day I said, like, obviously the world gets turned upside down. And then you're like, dang, it's like everyone I think could feel it, that everything that we've built up in our lives could easily be taken away.
Oh yeah.
The truth of the matter is it was always like that. We were putting our faith in men, and we, knowing, once you know the truth, it's like we should have never done that. So yeah, so then going down the rabbit hole, it's like, but a lot of people, it's like they kind of wake up a little bit, but not quite. And so when we start talking about the short season, all the things about like our timeline is wrong and things like that, they will never even really actually consider it. That's what I was saying on the last the last JT's mixtape. I showed a video where there was another big creator made a video, and he believed that the 300 years was added to the timeline. Of course, he doesn't go as far as we do, but I was saying like that. What really blows my mind is watching the Gunnar Heinsohn presentation, and even if you don't know the Gunnar Heinsohn work, the year 536 comes up. And it's funny, I was arguing with somebody on Twitter about this. I don't believe it was the year 536. I don't know what date is actually real, but history says that there was a cataclysm in that year. That was worldwide. The sun went dark for 18 months. There was a mini ice age after. It was followed by the bubonic plague. It was followed by famines and wars and all that stuff. And that's when the history says that the Eastern Roman Empire failed. Like, but nobody knows that. Like, nobody thinks about what does it actually mean? Because early on in the research we've done, I looked up, I think it was, I can't remember the name of the man they said changed to the AD chronology. But I thought it was like, I mean, how wild is it that they say that AD chronology was invented in the same time period where the world basically ended as they knew it? And I was like, but doesn't that make sense? Like, why there is two timelines? There was one that was before, and then there's one that we have now. And I think as a Christian, the fact that it's dated based on the year of our Lord, and I don't know, it's like, I don't know, to me, it's like, it's so disconnect. It's like, you don't even have to be that conspiratorial. You just have to look. You just have to look.
Yeah, and it is kind of weird that the Freemasons would go around to all of these different locations, and they would put a plaque on there for when they supposedly laid the cornerstone. And that plaque has the Anno Lucis, the year of light.
Yeah.
Right? Which it's like, I guess you get that by adding 4,000 years to the current year, right? So,
yeah, it's. I mean, obviously, we would say that it's still inaccurate because it's
still inaccurate.
It's still based on like the current chronology.
But it is interesting that they decide, they have a completely different time and calendar than everybody else does. And I've had just wild speculation here, but I have thought, what if some of the cornerstones inside of them had building plans, or they had blueprints, or there's all sorts of things that you could keep inside of a cornerstone. So what if part of this usurping of the old world was going around and taking out those cornerstones and filling them back in and taking those things away, because it does seem, like there was an effort to be able to go around and put a stamp on everything, almost
Yeah.
like a new ownership stamp that this was now going to be
Founded.
ours, right? This is the
Founded.
day that it was founded on. And I think it's a weird term to say that you founded something, right? I mean, it's just it's kind of wild, right? We were talking a little bit about architecture, and you know these world fairs have really been something that has like captivated my mind here for like a good couple months. And I don't know, maybe I just never paid attention to it before. I don't know, maybe I wasn't as big of a history buff when I was younger. I mean, like, I was a big science guy. I knew all the planets. I knew, like, actually science was one of my favorite subjects in school. So when I came to this realization of like biblical cosmology, and maybe there aren't satellites floating out there, and and maybe things aren't the way that they told us, it was kind of like soul crushing a little bit, because I really wanted all those things to be true. I knew so much about them. I watched all the shows. I was so into it. But it's it's interesting, the things that you will believe, and then upon like reflection you can kind of pick them apart, if you will, right? Like, I remember the investment guy telling me, like, you should constantly try to pick apart the investment. You should try to pick it apart. Don't fall in love with it, right? This is when you can wind up getting hurt. And I feel like that's what I wind up doing all the time now, is picking apart these things that I've been told, where I'm like, that's not really true. What that exact thing. We were talking about this before. I just finished a book talking about the ancient giants that used to rule America. And there's a quote from Abraham Lincoln
Yeah.
when he's standing at the Niagara Falls, saying that we're standing here looking at it just like the ancient giants that used to rule America would stand there. And we hear about this war against the natives. And a lot of those Mississippi mound builders, they've gone there. And the book that I read is basically a catalog of newspapers, local, firsthand accounts from the 1800s of people going, and it's a lot of farmers, actually, people with the plow hitting the mound and then uncovering the things that are inside of this mound. And first things first, they said that they could take a jawbone and it would fit over a regular human's jaw,
Oh,
right?
wow.
So like that's how big this thing is. And like, their height would range from like 10 to 12 feet. They clearly possess the ability to gather raw materials like bronze, and they actually had bronze breastplates that they made. So they had like a cold method of being able to process this copper. And it's like, I've never heard of any of this anywhere in history, but why are there these like giant like people who are part of the Native Americans? And so it made me think about that whole story about Native Americans and these wars that happened. What if it was like, hey, we need to kill these people off so that we can take over the things that are here, that are in the supposed new world? And at a lot of those world fairs, they would have like an example of what a classroom should look like. So you would go in and you would be able to view all the way from like kindergarten up to college level courses, and what that was going to look like. And then there would also be, cultures from around the world. And I thought to myself, is it possible, right? And this is totally wild speculation here, but is it possible that people were just given a script for the things that they believe? So if you believe that this is your history, that was actually an agreed upon history for a group of people that they were going to be told. And it's almost like these world fairs would be a way for you to be able to showcase how we're going to continue on with the brainwashing of what we want people to believe. Because I find it just highly interesting, the amount of cultural fairs that were here to show from different places around the world. And I know people will say, oh, but that's because they had just finished the Panama Canal and they wanted to be able to showcase the people that were around there and the place that they bought. But I don't know, part of that to me feels like a BS story again. It doesn't seem like that's the reality, right?
No question. I mean, I really do believe that. I don't know when they started introducing all the lies, but I mean, it seems to make sense that when public schools became a thing, that's right around the time where whatever was before was completely lost. I mean, it is weird when you start to look into this research now with like some of these buildings. It seems really easy to hide buildings that were built in the 1700s, 1800s,
Sure.
because obviously everyone would be long dead who was around, so they would
Yeah.
never would have known. But it is interesting when you see, like, I know My Lunch Break did a video about like the Empire State Building. That was one of those ones that I was really kind of blown away that as as with the normie kind of mindset, because I'm in construction and they built that in 13 months. The
That's
Empire
insane.
State Building.
That's insane.
It yeah, I mean, I was just thinking like, well, how could they have done that back then when we can't do anything like that now? And I mean, and the Empire State Building is more than just tall. It's really impressive if you actually know building. It's insane. So that was built, I think, in the early 1930s.
Right. Right in the Depression time.
Yeah,
Right.
right around the Depression era.
There, yeah.
But then you go back further, and it's absolutely crazy to see that they were doing this. Even somebody, I have to bring this video up, and I know it could be debunked. I'm gonna bring it up on maybe the next JT's mixtape. But it's one of these buildings that was supposedly built in the 1980s. It's, I think, it was in somewhere. It was one of those satellite states of Russia or the Soviet Union, and it's like you can imagine stuff could get hidden in a place like that because you didn't have access to the Western media. Nobody could go in there, and they
Sure.
say this building was real recent. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess the thing is, it's that there's that famous interview with that guy Yuri Bezmenov, I believe his name was, and he was a former KGB guy, and he was talking about how little time it takes to program people.
Right.
And you think about it, they've been doing that since the public school system happened. And then, yeah, so like how quickly can things turn into myth, into, think about the beginning of Lord of the Rings, when it's like some things were like history, then they were myth, and then they were legend, and then some things were just completely forgotten.
Yeah.
And so now we look and there's lots of evidence, but obviously these people love to gaslight us and say, "Oh no, I mean they drew dragons and giants on everything," but yeah, that was completely just. Everyone knew that was just mythology. They even changed what words mean. Like mythology, when we hear myth now, that's a made up story, but that's not how the Greeks ever used myths. A myth was a story that was supposed to teach you something. It didn't mean it wasn't true. It was like cultural foundations of what they believed, and this is why they did the things they did.
Right.
It was more than just a made up story, because if it was a made up story, it would be forgotten like every other made up story. But we still talk about the Greek myths today. Why? Because it came from a place of truth. And yeah, so if the Native Americans talked about not only giants, they talked about little people too. The weirdest legends, and it's like, so you have these mythologies all around the whole world about giants, little people, fairies, and all. It's like, why?
Yeah. Where does that come from?
Unless it came from some kind of place of a real story that actually happened. I mean, there's so many stories. Again, like the flood mythology is everywhere.
Yeah.
So this is well before that they would have had the Westerners come over and tell them about what the book of Genesis says. It's because it's true. It's because it really happened, and it's not because like Christianity copied off anyone else. It's because this is one story, and everyone's got a different version of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's you talk about the flood, right? And there's a lot of research out there from going over like the monolithic walls, right? Or in Peru, some of these places where you would never be able to lift any of these blocks, right? And people have like floated the idea of, well, maybe they knew something about sound so that they could move them.
Yeah.
They were able to do things like that.
Geopolymers or something.
But I've also thought about, what if there really were really, really big people, right? That were just massive. Because I have seen these pictures of books, and these books are like 5 feet tall. And I thought, let's say JT and I just wanted to be creative, right? We just wanted to go out and we just wanted to make a nice big book, right? And put all sorts of stuff in there. And I wanted to show someone else this book. I would need other people to help me physically move this book to be able to bring it somewhere. And there's rows of these books on cases. So like, who would actually go and make a book that was 5 feet tall that I would need other people to help me move it just to do it to be funny or to be cool? You wouldn't do that.
Not very practical.
Right? I mean, this is not, it goes along the lines with the doors that are 30 feet.
Yeah, I was going to say the giant doors. Why would you make a door so big? It would be hard to close and lock.
I mean, right now, today in Italy, people are going through a much smaller door that has maybe been made inside of that door, or they just have the door open. But you also see on the inside of the door, there is a lock that can only be reached if you get a ladder and climb 20 feet up this door to be able to lock the door. So again, where is the practicality in doing something like that? That doesn't make sense. But if you think that maybe there were people that were a lot bigger, and I've often thought about like Rome being able to conquer the whole world, were some of those people a little bit larger than everybody else? I don't know.
Well, you know what?
Speculating, but like
it's interesting you say that because Brian and I have talked about it on multiple podcasts. So there was this Roman emperor called Maximus Thrax. You ever heard of him?
No.
Let me try to look him up. Let's see, Maximus Thrax. And I want to say that, supposedly he was a Roman emperor, Maximus Thrax. And this guy was a Roman emperor. Let's see. I'll pull up his wiki page here. So it's interesting you say that, because if this Roman guy, and so it says over here, let's see where it says. Of course, they don't mention in the title if he was a giant. Okay, so he was born in between 173 and 238. That's interesting timing. And does it say how tall he is? They're really trying to not tell you that he was 8.5 feet tall. He was either 8.5 feet or 9 feet tall. So he was basically the same size as Goliath.
Huge people.
Why are they not saying? Obviously, I think we know why they're not saying. Maybe I'll have to giant. All right, because he was a giant. Okay, here's what it says. He was, where does it say? Okay, so right now, for reference, the tallest documented human was 8'11", and it says that he was. Am I just blind? I'm not seeing where they actually say how tall he was. I feel like they're trying to hide the fact that he was a giant, but obviously they're referencing a giant here.
Yeah. Like King Og of Bashan, right? In his bed.
Okay, here what it says. While it's not clear precisely how large Maximinus was, some historical sources claim a likely well-exaggerated equivalent of 8.5 feet tall.
It's pretty big.
Yeah, so the biggest guy ever, according to the science, was 8'11". But this Roman Empire, the emperor was 8.5 feet tall. Like I said, that's nearly the same size as Goliath. So were there giants in the Roman Empire?
King Og of Bashan, his bed was 6 feet wide.
Yeah, well, it's yeah. So I remember it was it mentions, I think, was it six some cubits or something? I forget how they obviously it's written in the Bible, but it works out to be Og's bed was made of iron. And obviously, I'm sure that was noted because it had to be really sturdy to support
Right.
this big man. And it was like 13.5 feet long, I think, and then it was 6.5 feet wide.
Way bigger than a California king, JT. Way bigger. This is
Yeah. Well, I had wondered, is that where the term king size bed even comes from? Because the kings were giant.
we're
It
giant.
wasn't just because they had a big bed because they liked to stretch out. It was because the kings needed a big bed.
Right.
But yeah, so like that, isn't it funny? So like, why does that emperor not get brought up? I mean, that's super interesting, right?
Like, if I were in school, I would love to have learned about these giants that were all over the place, that were everywhere. And I feel like, again, this is like that lie of omission, where, like, if you talk about this, then it brings up that whole Genesis 6 thing. And people probably don't want to talk about that, and they don't want to hear about that. And I also thought, like, why weren't the giants things that were like talked about in you know in in church? Like, I think I probably would have been a lot interested to hear about these giants that were massive, and that people were like grasshoppers in their sights, right? Talking
Yes, absolutely.
out. I mean, that to me sounds amazing, and it would probably, like, make someone really want to hear more about it. But it's like, there's I feel that's like a lot of people want to believe stuff that's there, but when it comes to things like giants, that sounds crazy. That really can't be mixing of people. And I always wondered, like, where does the Centaur and the Minotaur and the lion people and the people who don't have a head, but the actual head is in the middle of the
Right,
chest,
yeah.
like, where does all that weird stuff come from? Like, were people just on drugs? Like, I don't think so. I think they were drawing what they saw.
It's more likely that it was that.
Right? I mean, like, the drunk ramblings or the drug fueled ramblings of some crazy person probably wouldn't permeate throughout history like something that was real. And I also think, I'm trying to remember the name of the map, but it's like, there's this massive map from the 1500s where it basically has all of the continents of the world in one place, and then there's this massive ring that's going around them of lands. And when you zoom in on this map, you see dragons, you see centaurs, minotaurs, the weird people that don't have the head on the actual neck. And it's like, who made this detailed map, which it actually looks like it scales to be about correct? And why are all these weird things, right? And you I know you like to bring up the movies, and I'm now starting to, like, view movies a little bit differently, where I'm like, what kind of history
Oh
lesson am
yeah.
I being given right now?
Oh
That,
yeah.
like, I
Oh
actually
yeah.
have to pay attention, because they're really dropping truth bombs about how it used to be, right? And
These people are not that creative. They're getting the stories from somewhere else. That was almost every time. They're probably either getting just they're automatic writing these things by inspiration of demons, or they're taking older stories and they're putting it into the movies, or they're trying to create demonic prophecies that are going to come true. But I think it's more than likely they get a story. It's a replica of some other story with, like, the characters changed a little bit.
right, yeah. So do you think that's well, I know that J.K. Rowling has said that, she channeled those books. She was a medium for a spirit that the you know gave her this, basically. And she, in these books, you can see these handwritten books where she writes out all of these stories. And there are numerous actors who have said, hey, I wouldn't have been able to do such and such scene if it had not been for me.
The spirits.
You
No,
know
I 100% believe that. Even I said I always bring up the movie Venom. So the second Venom movie, at one point he's trying to solve some case or something like that. So Eddie Brock is a reporter, and so the symbiote is some alien, but to us we don't believe in space aliens. The symbiote is the black goo. It's a demon. So they can create, they gain symbiosis together, which is rare. Probably that you can actually fully function with a demon.
Right.
But I think that's what they're kind of showing you. And so at one point, they're trying to solve this case, and Venom is taking over Eddie Brock's arms. You can still see he still looks like what's his name? I can't remember the actor, but he still looks like himself, but his hands are all black. And he's just taking the pins and he's just doing this. And he's writing it. And so then he has to look at it afterwards and see what's written. Or the picture is drawn. And it's like, yeah, that's how like people like Keith Richards talk about how they wrote certain songs. Same thing with Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
He's like literally doing an interview on like 60 Minutes and he's explaining like, do you think I came up with these lyrics? And he's repeating them over. And it's like, he's like saying like, I didn't come up with that, even though he's the author. Right. Yeah. Tom Hardy is. Yes. Good. Thanks for letting me know.
And isn't it in that same video, in that same interview, he's asked, like you've accomplished so
like,
much.
Why are you still doing it?
Why are you still doing this? And he says, I'm keeping up my end of the deal.
Yeah.
Why would you say something like that? if it's not true? Because I have often wondered, I'll even see commercials with people who are extremely famous. They have, more money than they would know what to do with, but yet they still do it. And so I wonder, the conspiratorial mind, right? I've gone down that whole, high-level Freemasons, those who have been given the honorary degree, right? Not one that you can make application. They've been given that coveted 33rd degree. And they all tend to want to write about one similar topic. And Manly P. Hall, he has a book, The Secret Teaching of All Ages. It has a secondary name, The Symbological Philosophy of Kabbalistic, and I'll have to look it up. I don't want to butcher it. But in these writings, he talks about you being able to make a pact and you being given all of the worldly things that you could possibly desire, and you're doing it to the Great Spirit Lucifuge. And why do all of these people at that high level, right? Like you did that video, you had the guy, he had all the various awards. They had the two-headed double eagle, right? Where both eagles looking either side. That is the symbol of the Scottish Rite. And their motto is Ordo ab Chaos, order out of chaos. So, these guys, Albert Mackey, Manly P. Hall, they all like to write about the same thing. And it's like devil worship in France. And why are they writing about all of these things, right? And in that short season thing, I think people have talked about before that when Jesus is reigning, there are people who don't believe, right? This is why he has to have a rod of iron. And there aren't any other religions that are happening. So maybe, just maybe, you had to keep it a secret while he was here. And when he was no longer here, the gig was up and nothing had to be a secret anymore. Because I do find it interesting that for those who supposedly keep a lot of secrets, a lot of their information is public and you can find it and you can go look all of this stuff up. And maybe they just don't have to keep it a secret anymore. And it's just at the highest levels that these people really understand what's going on. But
no, that's a good call. That's an interesting point because I think it's funny just based on the history we're taught that eventually the Theodosian laws came into practice in the Roman Empire. And if you guys aren't aware, Theodosius I enacted this set of laws that outlawed paganism. Like Christianity was the only religion allowed. And I think that we see the Roman Catholic Church and we see all the idolatry and all the weird religious things that don't seem of God that they do and all the pomp and circumstance. And so we look back on that, the Theodosian laws, and we see, oh, well, this is when Constantine and all these guys got together and they tried to co-opt Christianity. But I think it's really interesting that with the mindset of the short season, like, should we attribute ill motives to what they were doing back then? I mean, because it was such a massive deal. It's like people were acting like that they had to do this, but why? They could do anything they wanted to. They could have just killed all the Christians.
Sure.
So why would they convert? I mean, because obviously, if you read the book of Revelation and you read like the Gospels, there's really not that many of them. I'm pretty sure the Romans could take out all these other peoples. Pretty sure they could have wiped out the Christians if they wanted to.
Yeah, this
But
was like the smallest sect of people.
yeah, but they didn't, because obviously there was something to it that obviously it's like, because it was real, and it was, I think that all these things happened. So actually, I was just talking about this on a different stream, I think. So it was, I think we were talking about it on when I did the spaces with Dan Blue. I had a conversation with my buddy Matt from Postmodern, and we're talking about how the Protestant church has this position of, they call it sola scriptura. So that the scripture is the the main authority and the only authority. So we don't even go by church history. I think actually, you know what? I would say that I agree that the scripture should be the highest, but it should not be the only authority,
Right.
because that means we learn nothing from what happened before. We don't learn from any of the church in the past. And I think that's actually dangerous. And I think that's what leads us to the belief that nothing's happened since the times of Jesus. There's been nothing prophetic that's happened. There's been no real movement in the kingdom of God since Jesus came. Now, I think that's dangerous, because even actually, I was interesting. I saw this video with from Wes Huff. Now, Wes Huff, it's like, I'm not going to attribute malice to him, but it is interesting his rise to fame, and now he's coming out trying to like defend the Schofield Bible. And he said he seems like a smart guy, but he said some dumb things. So the dumb thing he said was, he was saying that the Bible came before the church, and you're like, what are you talking about? He was like, because he was saying like that. I know what he probably meant is like the scriptures, like some of the scrolls were before the church, but no, the Bible did not come before the church. The church gave us the Bible of what we have today.
Right.
And so if you lean on it and you say this is the thing I can trust, you still have to attribute that was Holy Spirit inspired men wrote it and gave it to us. You know, you have to put a lot of faith in the men who did that, right? And I think we do. We do believe it, and we have a lot of reason to believe it. But him trying to say that the Bible came before the church, you're like, what are you talking about? They didn't have a Bible during in the accounts of the New Testament.
Right.
Like literally the first churches were like they were just letters. And obviously the gospels got written down later too. So these things came afterwards. So like then you look into the times when the whole world became a Christian world. Well, like that's like, we should not be willing to throw that out. We should actually look into it, and maybe we should really start to think about like how and why
Yeah.
they did all how we did all the things they did. And I think that, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that was like a tangent, but I just thought that, yeah, we need to reevaluate like some of the early maybe Catholic positions, and like maybe the early Orthodox positions that maybe they were not active agents of the devil who were trying to co-opt Christianity, but they actually believed, and they believed the things they believe for good reasons. And they could have been wrong about things, but I mean, we should not throw the baby out with the bathwater here.
Yeah, I've always wondered about the saints thing. There's a diner that I go to near me, and they have like 4 images of saints that are there, right? And all those images of the saints are always the same. They kind of have like that halo around their head. And I've always wondered, like, where do the saints fit in? Because like unless you're in Catholicism, saints don't really make a whole lot of sense.
Well, I think the Orthodox, so I think the Catholics and the Orthodox Church, and then maybe we can talk about this a little bit, the hagiographies.
Right.
I think that I was told, and I don't know this for sure because I've not researched this, and I said I didn't know much about hagiographies until very recently, that I believe that the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church believe the hagiographies are legitimate.
Right.
That does not to say that they're absolutely correct, but people who proclaim Christ do believe in them. And as you just said earlier, and I think maybe this is something to point out, is that why didn't the church tell you about giants, John? Like, why didn't they tell you about these other crazy things that are in the Bible? Because some people will believe the right amount of crazy that allows you to still proclaim Christ.
Right. Right.
But they want to throw out all the other miraculous things in the Bible. And I think that's why you get into like biblical cosmology. And it's like, well, we believe a pretty amazing, crazy thing to believe that God sent his son and he was born to a virgin. He died and he rose again. And then he comes back at some point. Like we can believe in that crazy. Oh, but a 9-foot tall man?
That's
Like
ridiculous.
who could believe that? I mean, like, so that's why if you believe that, if you read the book of Acts and the miraculous things that the apostles did, you read the Gospels, all the miraculous things Jesus did, Jesus said, you'll do greater things than this. And then so there's accounts of saints doing greater things than that, but we don't believe it because we can't see it and we're told it's not true. But some people with faith believe Jesus, and then so they're willing to believe things because it actually goes right along with the Bible. It does not contradict it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's like how much you do believe, right? I think you said like, your faith is not my problem.
Yeah, your lack of faith is not my problem,
It's
because
not my.
these people looking for physical evidence of things. That's your own fault for asking. Like I said, I will for my own sake, I enjoy researching this stuff and trying to find out more things. And I want to make our position as strong as I can be, but I don't need it to be any stronger to believe that Jesus said and he meant what he said back on the Olivet Discourse. So
Right.
people needing physical evidence, it's like, yeah, at some point you say like, so if I could show you who the two witnesses were, would you believe then? If I had a good answer for the two witnesses, would you believe? No, you wouldn't.
Right.
So if I could show you who I believe the Antichrist is, would you believe? No, you wouldn't. And that's why I said your lack of faith is not my problem, Doubting Thomas. Like you want to see it, but I can't take you and show you it.
Yeah.
So you're looking for a reason to not believe.
I know I brought up some architecture stuff before, and I often think to myself, these are like some of the I have looked at them in a completely different light now of where these things came from and the story of where they are. So, I heard somebody once say, what you have to believe about America is that there was this country that was started, that they didn't want to have big government. They didn't want to have a lot of big government intervention. They didn't want to have, big spending by the government. And then in a very short period of time, when we were super small as a country in terms of the population of people, we went and built the most beautiful, ornate state capitol buildings. Right now, there's more than just these state capitol buildings, but the most beautiful of all of them, in my opinion, is the Iowa State Capitol building.
Oh yeah, yeah. We were talking about that. I think we talked about that one last week. That was
right.
That's tough to compete with that one.
I mean, 29 different types of marble. 4 of them are only found in Italy. And so you're telling me that they decided that the buildings that the government workers were going to work in should be the most beautiful, the most gorgeous decorations that you've ever seen. And it kind of just doesn't make sense for me anymore, right? Like when I think of them building a municipal building, in any town near you, is there marble in it? Is there fine wood? Is
You know how
there
much
lawn?
people would complain if their government was doing that right now?
People would lose their mind, and
and rightfully they would.
Right. So now you're telling me at the very first beginning, foundation of all of this, insane asylums, schools, castles, all this stuff was just built. I mean, like I think a lot of people think that for you to be able to see incredible architecture, you need to go outside of the US. That's what I thought at one point in time. And then I realized how much amazing stuff is actually here. I mean, it's unreal when you look at, the state capitol buildings are everywhere. They're still here. I think those world fairs for me is like we needed to figure out a way to be able to erase history. And maybe it starts with stuff like that. You start with stories of how you could build something. Look at that. Look, I mean,
It kind of reminds me of like something you might see kind of in Russia because it's got like it's not quite the onion domes, but it's got, but like they do like the Russians like the color and then like the gold.
right. But
Yeah,
this is,
you'd be like you would say, wait a minute, there's still potholes in the road. They're building that. That's what everyone would say right now, and rightfully they would say that like for our governor who I didn't even vote for. Yeah, right.
I mean, it's unbelievable that was built during a time when we were starting America. We didn't have a lot of money, and that was the building that we were going to have the government people work in. Does that really make sense? Does that make any sense to anybody? I
Iowa,
mean, like, that,
Iowa.
not Washington D.C., Iowa.
That's what I always say.
20
That's what I always say. You know, it's always kind of. I mean, has anybody else always wondered why they always do like the primaries in Iowa? Because I always thought like, what's? I mean, they say that obviously it's kind of like a middle of the road state, so it's kind of a bellwether or whatever. But still, maybe this is why Iowa. There is something more significant about Iowa than we ever knew. Maybe.
I mean, that dome is 23 karat gold.
Is that true? Is it? Have you heard that? Is that true?
Yeah. This is right on the Iowa State Capitol Visitor Guide. I mean, you know, it's got
Is it
all
gold
the.
plated or is it actually gold?
Let me see. Is this gold?
Somebody
plated?
says, look up Jefferson, Missouri Capitol. Okay.
There we go.
You know what? I can do that. People are complaining that sometimes I just do live premieres and I don't actually do them live. But this is live and I'll prove it to you now.
The Capitol dome has been gilded 5 times, it says. The gold leaf covering the dome is 250 thousandths of an inch thick and is 23 3/4 carats.
That's look here. We got another one.
Look at this. Look at that. Unreal.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's funny because you do kind of see like the World Capitol building, or not the World Capitol. Gosh, it pretty much is the one in DC, and yeah, it's obviously not as unique as you thought it was because they're everywhere.
No, they're literally they're in.
Isn't
every
there one in Pennsylvania that's like is
Harrisburg State Capitol looks just like this. Huge building.
I thought that one. I thought the one in Pennsylvania is really cool.
There we go. Look at the ins. I mean, are you kidding me?
That looks like a lot, doesn't it? That's pretty.
Yeah. Look at that complex. Not one building. I think it's almost as if like
look at all the underground stuff too.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many things where where you have windows that are at the street level. I don't think that that's the original, right? I think this probably goes down farther. If you can, real quick, Salt Lake City, Utah, and the interior. Okay, there's these white steps that they have that are just unbelievable.
Actually, my friend, is this one right here?
Yep. Now, inside of that building, they have these white steps, and I mean, honestly, I would not even believe it if I didn't see it myself and had taken a trip there. There, those white steps right there, and that is like just one side. There's a whole nother side that this looks into. Yep, there you go. Yep. That's unreal.
Yeah, Mormons
So
did that.
so you're telling me that a young country decided that this is what a state capitol building needed to look like in Utah. Where did all that marble come from? Who was the worldwide logistics shipping network that would move marble like that? And how are you getting it from the coast to Utah? I mean, just
Yeah, not to mention they got a castle in there too. They have the their
just look
oh,
at
thank
that.
you, Saved by Jesus. Yeah, they also have their like the Mormon temple there. That's absolutely crazy. You know, when I saw one on my profile over here, and I forgot that I used to save some of these before I even actually did the short season stuff. But here's the one in Connecticut. You ever seen this one?
No. Wow.
That one's pretty impressive too. It's got
That's
that gold dome
that
too.
same gold dome, right? So I mean, just I mean, like, where did they quarry all of this stone from? I mean,
Yeah,
that's just it's over the top. It's not even like a little bit. I mean, this is like way more than you would ever need. I mean,
yeah.
look
Somebody must have said, "You think that the taxpayers are going to get upset by this?" I don't. And it's fine.
not at all.
Thank you, Scott.
Could you imagine if somebody today said we're going to be building a new building and they were going to do it in this style today? I mean, how much do you think this would cost today?
I mean, I think that's the thing. I think that what you'd have to say. Oh, so this is on the inside of it too.
Unbelievable.
I think what you'd have to say is it's priceless. I don't think it can. I don't think it could be done. I mean, I'm not saying they couldn't do it over the course of, like many years, but it's not realistic to do it. I don't know who could do it.
Or like, I think of like the Palace of Versailles, right? Like over 2,000 rooms, no bathrooms, no running water, but yet they have all of those fountains. Yeah, Buffalo City. I just saw you went past
Oh
there.
yeah, yeah. I
Unbelievable, these buildings.
yeah.
This makes no sense.
That one's straight at that picture's straight out of Ghostbusters.
Oh, is that where Ghostbusters was?
No, but I mean, I'm just saying.
Oh.
No, that's what I was saying. I mean, like when I first saw these buildings, I said that looks like. I mean, look at the top of this building. Tell me it couldn't have been used for Ghostbusters.
Unbelievable.
Look at the motif on it too, and it's almost like Native American looking. It's really strange. It doesn't even fit all the other. But here's the interior of it.
That's unbelievable. I mean,
It makes no sense. I mean, it makes no sense.
those are mosaic tiles. Is that like a mosaic tile that they have on there?
Oh, what happened there? Yeah. Let me go back to that picture. Yeah, it's really strange. In Detroit, there's a bunch of really interesting looking buildings, kind of like this, where they're almost like they've got almost like a little bit of an ethnic flair that a lot of like the normal state capitol buildings don't have. But this thing's got murals and stuff. It's got really demonic looking stuff in here, honestly.
Really?
Even here's like where their conference, I guess, where they meet.
So so wild speculation here. Do you think that they just went and added some of these things afterwards? Like, do you think they added some of the things to the cathedrals? Do you think they added some of the stuff inside? I mean,
It's my personal opinion that a lot of the really Roman looking things were Roman.
okay.
And so that if there was any kind of remnants of some pagan idolatrous looking things on them, maybe they weren't all removed during that time. They were just people took them over.
Okay.
Now, some of this stuff, yeah, it easily could have been added later. I mean, obviously, we think that if I don't believe they built the buildings in the time span they built them, I still do believe they could have added different art and murals. I mean, this mural right here, I mentioned it last week. I was like, look how satanic that thing looks.
Right.
Look at it. It says protection under there. It's like it's an evil looking angel and this lady's offering up a baby to him. He's already got
Yeah.
one baby. It's like, what is going on? And
Yeah.
that's the Buffalo City Hall.
Huh.
What was I gonna try to? I was gonna show you. Yeah, I made a bunch of videos about architecture before I ever knew anything about any of the short season stuff, and there's just so much. Yeah, I think Eastern Columbia building. I think this might be in Detroit. This is the Fisher Building.
Probably built
Again,
in record time, right? Like a year.
again, look, you tell me that's not straight out of Ghostbusters. It's like
Yeah.
every one of these buildings just looks so insane.
So do you think there was maybe like a little like an early, middle, and late period of this reign where, I almost like wonder, you know, clearly you needed steel as reinforcement, right? So this whole industrial thing had to have been at some point in time during this, right?
See, again, I'm maybe an outlier for most of the little season community. I do believe that the millennial reign was Christ ruled that from heaven.
Okay.
And I think that some of this stuff was already here, but obviously I do believe that they built some things I don't know how they did back in those days.
Or
But I think a lot of it was taken over afterwards.
so you think like star forts are old world, like pre-flood
Definitely,
stuff,
I
or
would say definitely say that. Oh, here's another one, the Louisiana one. Yeah, star forts I believe were definitely old school. Yeah, old world. Yeah, some of these. Yeah, this is the Louisiana State Capitol building. It's like again, it's another just
look
like
at
just
that.
it's ridiculous.
That's unbelievable.
But yeah, I don't know that every one of these things, and I think that's why like I just can't prove anything. But again, look at that building. Look at the angels on it.
Look at the angels on the side there. Yeah.
Kind of weird. Kind of strange that you would have like why would you even put them up that high?
Right.
Isn't it funny to even think about that? Like, so what would your perspective be from the ground? This is a tall building. If you look up this building, is that it right there? That can't be it right there. That's the top of it.
Yeah. That's this is yeah.
Oh, this is another one. This one's crazy too. This is the General Electric building in New York City. Look at the top of that one.
It's unreal.
Again, looking straight up like Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I do wonder, how old are all these things, right? I mean, because some of this stuff to me looks like it's a lot older than something that was built within like 100 years.
It is so weird. I mean, yeah, here's a good montage. Actually, I did a video probably mentioning all these ones. There is one that has like this building right here. Looks like it's got a Polyon on there. It looks like an angel right there.
Yeah.
That was the Niagara Mohawk building. But so many of these buildings, there's your what is it? Chrysler building.
Yep.
Thank you, Chudian. Is that a guy? Get that right? That one is crazy. That other one is really crazy. This one right here.
Yeah, that is just a
I think that's in Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's excessive. That all real
We're
gold
just gonna
too?
do an office building. It's gonna be a little thing, A buddy of mine is redoing a historic hotel in New Jersey, and the amount of money that they had to spend to redo this place. Looking at something like this, I mean, yeah, this is the Chrysler building, right? Yeah.
Is
Or-
no that this one is not. I think this one is what is it called? It's the American Radiator Building. Oh, that's in New York as well. For some reason I thought it was in Chicago. That is just sick.
it really is gorgeous though, right? I mean, like, I think a lot of people think there isn't beautiful architecture. They're just, it's It's everywhere.
The
Maybe
Chrysler Building's pretty epic too.
it is. And
It's got the
notice
gargoyles on the sides and everything.
nothing looks like that today, right? Like even the Burj Khalifa, right? I mean, it's a tall building. It looks nice, but it just doesn't have that same look and feel to it, right? Like this is a different era.
Yeah, there's a reason why they could. I mean, yeah, the modern skyscrapers look like garbage. Even I went into the One World Trade Center when I went to New York, and it's. I mean, the only thing impressive about it is that it's tall.
Right. Yeah, it's not done anywhere near how these are done on the inside. I mean, like someone really, really took their time and they really cared about it, as opposed to now, we're just trying to make it functional so that we can get rent, so that we can pay off the construction loan and we can flip this building and move on. Whereas looking at like these state capitol buildings, someone really, really cared and took their time. Just randomly, what are your thoughts on this whole thing about the pyramids and the thing that they supposedly found underneath them? Any thoughts on this whole news things about
Oh
about
yeah, I mean,
pyramids?
I was saying to Brian, I think the interesting part of that about that story for me is that I know that there's stuff under the pyramids. I've always known there's stuff under everything. Every bit of research we've done has shown me that there's a layer of sediment and then there's things under everything. So of course, if something as old as the pyramids, they definitely got stuff under them. The real question is, why are they telling us there's things under them now? And to me, again, I think it shows that they've been making stuff up before that, because like, how did they not know there was things under there? Because we always get that side building section of the pyramid and we show the king's chamber, we show like the shaft going here, we show the shaft going here, and we see the shaft going under it. Okay, so wouldn't that shaft that goes under it kind of
Go
intersect with whatever they're showing us on the LiDAR?
right,
I mean, that has been a story, a legend, or whatever forever, that there's something deep under Egypt. That's why that picture that was, the AI art that came out like like probably 2 years ago,
right,
of like, yeah, the pyramids were literally just the tops of these giant obelisks. I mean, it was, everybody knew that was fake, but it's like, it does make you wonder when you do the mud flood research, how far down could some things go?
do you think it's possible that the Library of Alexandria burning is a lie, and it's actually still somewhere intact, just being reserved for the right time? Because I do find it interesting that there seems to be like these revelations of, oh, look at this thing that we found here, right? Almost as if like somebody has a catalog of all these sites and these locations and what we're going to release next.
I've wondered recently if the story of the burning of the Library of Alexandria could be almost like a um, just a way to say why we've lost so many things,
Mm,
because maybe it's a way to explain why certain history and technology is lost without explaining that the world was destroyed in the first millennia, right? Because it's like people weep for the knowledge lost from the Library of Alexandria, but it's like, but all the Roman knowledge was lost too, right?
right,
You know what I'm saying? Like, isn't that kind of like, isn't there some kind of disconnect where like we don't know what happened during the Dark Ages because something happened? And again, that's why I said, going back to that, I think that there's a reason why that's not talked about in schools, about that there was some cataclysm that was worldwide that
right,
caused the fall of Rome. Why not?
right.
And so they tell us about some library being burned down, but again, like that, I remember like always questioning that story when I first woke up, because I was like, wait a minute, the Romans were not the barbarians. Why would they ever burn a library?
Right,
Like they would have kept anything that was worthwhile. Like they would ever just burn knowledge, because like, at least we're told, like the Romans and the Greeks were all about gnosis.
right.
They would
Right.
all wanted to know more things. So like that would not have been something they would have done. And maybe they said it was unintentional or whatever. But again, the Romans are not stupid. So like they would never try to burn down historical things. It's like that even the story from Josephus that the Romans did not want to destroy the temple.
Right.
That was a really interesting part of that story was like there was almost this rage put in both sides. Yeah,
Right.
this
Right.
thing where it's like it was like the immovable object versus the unstoppable force because the Romans already that was their territory at that point. So they could have just killed those people without destroying
And then
the
just reused it for whatever they wanted.
yeah, some
Yeah.
awesome megalith that they could have done anything anything. Yeah, they could have built a different temple on there. They could have changed it. But no, they decided to destroy it. So that's not something that they would do. They're not trying to rule over ashes. So they would never intentionally burn a library on purpose, I don't think. So that being said, yeah, what if that story is a way to explain why certain things have been lost? But obviously it's a lie because there was something else that destroyed all the history and the timeline completely.
So just talking on burning stuff, right? All of the great fires and these buildings that seem like they're, solid, brick, marble, concrete. Do you have any theories, speculation on how they destroyed all this stuff? Because I've often wondered to myself, like, a fire's not going to leave a brick building completely destroyed, right? Like, but you know, I've wondered, like, how did they destroy all this stuff? And I don't remember whose channel I was watching, but I think they floated the idea that what if all these utilities were already here? What if natural gas, water, and some of these other things were already there, and people just left the gas on, left the building, and just let it fill up? Because I do kind of have a hard time believing that. Listen, if I don't believe that a fire can make a building collapse, right?
Are we talking about a different story now?
Right.
I also agree.
If I don't believe that story, that a fire can make a steel building just collapse on itself, how do these buildings of brick and concrete, and how do those things just get destroyed that way?
Okay, so this will trip you out. Um, this might answer your question, or this might not answer anybody's question. But I remember watching a show before I ever made content. I used to watch historical shows, and I watched like stuff about Rome and World War II. And now I know that I was lied to about almost everything I learned. But I did know some of the things like that Romans had technology. And if you guys ever get some time, maybe I'll try to find a link to this video. But it was talking about like the most impressive Roman inventions that were lost. Thank you, Trish. Yeah, it was really interesting. One of them was like this crazy glass they made. Obviously, I always talk about a lot about the Roman concrete. But one interesting thing, I I just quickly just Googled this real fast. But the question on one of these answers things like, how did the Romans? I don't want that. How did the Romans blow up half of a mountain with water? So this is what they say. Obviously, it says the Romans dug a right angle in the mountain. Then they dumped a whole bunch of water in there. And the pressure of the water hitting the angle made it blow up. Whatever. I mean,
That
so I
sounds
guess
absurd.
so. I guess the truth is that the Romans had technology that blew up a mountain. Now, obviously, I do believe that they could have used water pressure to blow something up, but not by dumping it in.
Right.
I'm pretty sure you'd need a lot. I mean, wouldn't the water stop running into the mountain at some point? Because obviously, water takes the path of least resistance,
Right.
unless there was something that really pressurized it until it could explode. But anyways, the point is, how did they blow up that mountain? I don't know, but I mean, historically, that's one of the things that the Romans did when they were mining a place. They could blow up a mountain. Well, again, I don't know. I mean, I have no idea, but I agree with you that if you went over to one of these stone buildings and you just threw a bunch of, you know, flaming logs on it, it's not going to burn down.
No.
The wood's going to burn out. The fire's going to burn out before that, and they would just be singed and whatever. But yeah, I mean, there's those stories. What is it, like the Greek fire? Like the Greeks had this kind of fire that burned certain things. I kind of even wonder, like that show Game of Thrones, and they had the dragon fire. And it was something, it's like dragon fire could melt stone. Maybe they. I mean, I don't know. I mean, to me, that it's funny that we talk about this, and I mentioned this to Topher last week, is that we don't believe that they built those buildings like the state capitol buildings. We don't believe that we did that. We believe it was they were here from before. But we have no problem saying the Romans did it.
Right.
So we don't believe those buildings were built in the early 1900s or the late 1800s. But we believe the Romans did it over 1,000 years ago. So they were very clever.
Super advanced.
They were very clever. They knew how to do lots of things. So it is interesting, like what the Bible does not mention. It doesn't mention the kind of siege works these people had. We don't know like what, I mean, the way I read the Bible, I don't know that the Roman Empire was more impressive than the Nebuchadnezzar's. Because you really think about it, like Nebuchadnezzar was the golden head. So it seemed like everything was kind of progressively we're getting worse.
Right.
So we know that the Temple of Solomon was crazy impressive. And I think most people believe that that was more impressive than the second temple. The people from the Chaldeans, they destroyed the first temple.
Right.
So I mean, it's a long way to say is I don't know, but I agree that I don't think it was just regular fire. Couldn't be.
Couldn't be. Yeah. They're just that story for me doesn't hold any water. And I've been trying to figure out, like how would you be able to get rid of all this stuff, right? Like it just seems it seems like the more and more I dig, the more and more questions that I have. But the one thing that I have realized is that the narrative that we've been given about how these things came to be just seem to be more and more absurd the more that like I research and I check into it. It just doesn't it doesn't hold a lot of water for me, right? It really doesn't.
Yeah, speaking of that, you know what? I'm gonna give maybe an opportunity. I don't know if this is dangerous for me to do this, but next week I'm gonna be in West Palm Beach. And my wife's going to be taking a class, and I'm going to have probably a lot of free time. I think I'm getting there middle of next week. And I was researching old world stuff in West Palm Beach. And I found this building here, and this is pretty funny. So this is something I'm definitely going to check out. And this doesn't look like something you'd find in South Florida, but here it is. Now, see, the funny part about this building, this is what is it? It's called the Richard and Pat Johnson Palm Beach County History Museum. And so one of the funniest parts about this, of course, I thought this is just, of course, it's just too perfect here, is when you look it up, it says on Wiki, it says, with construction beginning in 1916 and finally concluding in 1917. So, yes, that building built 1 year. 1 year they built that building. And again, it's right in the middle of West Palm Beach in Florida. Like I said, you think that they said, we got to dress this Roman building up. Let's put some shades on the outside. Throw a couple palm trees in front.
Yeah.
1 year. Look at it. Look, it's got multiple columns on the sides too.
It's like even if you were to pick the company and ask them to recreate this for me, I want you to do all the plans beforehand, right? I get there's the approvals and things that you need, but just the physical work to do the foundation, get all the materials in, just from the outside, could you actually do that in 1 year? And I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, JT? Like, could that be done in 1 year now?
No way. Even like But like I said, even like if you look closely at the building too, you look at the bottom of it. The windows are on the like literally on the level of the grass. I mean, I don't know about you. I mean, I'm not from Florida. Obviously, I've visited there many times, but where we live in Virginia, because we're right at sea level,
Right.
and so we're told that we don't build basements, even though some of the oldest buildings here have basements.
Right.
So if you live in West Palm Beach, you guys live anywhere near West Palm Beach, is it usual to build basements in places? Because there you go. Like clearly there's obviously there's an underground level to this place. What again, if like you look, it's this place is really close to the water. So that's the funny part about a lot of these buildings. If you look at where the front door is, it looks like that was once the second floor. And the first floor is under the ground now.
Right.
But how does that make sense? I mean, because again, you think about it, sea level. Florida's at sea level, so like sea level's changed.
I mean, how many people buy brand new houses and say, "Hey, what I really want is to have a window that's going to be underground, right? And I want to have half of the window, can be viewed above the ground." Nobody would build a house that way, and then just decide, "Hey, let's just fill in this bottom part and let's not have these windows be shown." Like that to me speaks that there's something else that's happening here, right? Like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
No, but anyways, if you guys are in that area, like hit me up, email me at JT and maybe we can grab a lunch or something like that. Do some research. But yeah, that building. There's actually another library there that has something similar to that. It's again, I think this one's more Florida up, I think. Like I said, I was telling you it has like the Spanish tile roofs. Let me see. You can fill up the time, John, if you want, as I research this.
Yeah. No, I the next thing I thought we could take a look at was who was responsible for all the demolition of these world fairs, right?
That's a good question.
They built them all in record amount of time. And then somebody, their job was to go around and take care of all of these afterwards, right? So there's a wrecking company. It's called the Chicago Wrecking Company. It's a really, really unique name, right? It's just straight up Chicago Wrecking Company. And they have a catalog. It's called the $50 million Louisiana Purchase Exposition Catalog. And so inside of this catalog, you could go and you could find all of these things that these guys said were additional, extra stuff that could be purchased. So, if you think about a standard demolition, someone's going to come in with a wrecking ball, they're going to come and destroy stuff. Normally, they just cart these items away. Like people are not normally going and taking things that from a demolished building and then reselling them for a secondary person, right, to go and purchase. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, here's the other one. That's what I was saying. Like, look, it looks like Greco-Roman, but this is my thought. They added the Spanish tiles and they added like the chimneys and stuff like that, but all that stuff's added later. But like this again was like a.
It would be right in line with all the other things that we've been looking at.
Yeah,
right?
they floored this one up, but this is another one. Yeah, like I mean, look how big the columns are.
Yeah, massive columns.
Yeah, I'll go take a look at that one. I'll see if I can find out, get a little more detail about it. But anyways, yeah. So you have some details about the destruction of the demos on.
Yeah. So these demos, it's interesting. These guys would basically, they had an entire catalog, 400 and something pages, maybe more, of all of these materials that you could go and purchase. And one of the things that I found super interesting was, they go everything from like the fittings to steel that you could purchase. You could purchase wood that had been, valves. And then I saw bathroom stuff. And I mean, these are like some of the most ornate bathrooms toilets.
They were
vanity,
demoed at the World Fair.
and these were at the World Fair, and you could purchase it afterwards if you wanted to purchase a furnace, if you wanted to purchase a boiler, if you, it was almost as if somebody found a warehouse full of stuff and just said, "Hey, JT, why don't we just go and fence all of this? We could just sell it all to anybody that we wanted to, but radiators of any size, furnaces of
Man,
any
you know what? That
size."
again, that actually makes you believe that it's like the idea this stuff was temporary. It's like somebody's greed said we need to destroy this because it won't make sense to the narrative. But it's like somebody's like, I ain't destroying all of it. I'm going to sell this stuff.
Right. I mean, there's bathroom combinations. You can pick which kind of tile you want. You can pick which kind of toilet you want, vanities you want, tiles. I mean, it really just doesn't make sense that there would be all of these things for purchase. I mean, even the toilets with embossing on them, like it just doesn't make sense that you would have things that look that good for something that you are only going to have going for 6 months. I mean,
I mean, what a waste. What
right?
a waste. I mean, it makes no sense that they would possibly do that just to destroy it.
I mean, a whole section on just polished marble lavatories.
You
Who
know,
is putting polished marble bathrooms together when they're going to tear this thing down in 6 months?
you know what's another thing that I never even really thought about? Well, I mean, I've thought about it, but I never talked about it. Okay, so if you go look at the World Fair in St. Louis, Buffalo, Philadelphia, Chicago, Omaha, San Francisco, et cetera, et cetera. Go look at the places where they built the buildings. It's pretty prime real estate, right? The whole city's built out around all that.
Yep.
Okay, so why was there nothing there before the fairs were? Were they in anticipation of having this very short-lived World Fair? There was nothing there at these real prime real estate in these burgeoning cities. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make sense that you could just destroy this thing. Somebody said Spokane, Washington. Actually, that's a funny thing. I should probably look that up. There was a World Fair in the 1970s. I think it might have been Spokane. It was somewhere up in that region. It looks like a World Fair you'd get today. They're putting up like tents and crap. It's like, it's not like, they didn't build stone buildings or replicas of stone buildings. But yeah, like, so if you had this prime real estate for this fair where they said up to 200 buildings were built, it makes no sense that something would not have been there unless it was out in the sticks, outside
Right.
the city. But no, these are like at the waterfront in these places. And that's the one thing that I feel like that unless you don't care about what's true, you would never believe that they built temporary like ponds and fountains and all that stuff, because that's not temporary. That's obviously real. All the bulkheads they put in, all the infrastructure that it took to build that. And another thing that I know that Topher was talking about on the last stream was in building, you have to have a lot of infrastructure just to hold all the weight of all the things. Like, you need like the roads and the bridges to be strong enough to even like carry all the materials into these places. There's so much more to go in. And I think, of course, John Levi, he's a bit of a pariah in this community after he came out against the Little C's and also the Book of Revelation altogether, which was unsettling. But the one thing that he's brought up that I've started to take more note of is the terraforming of the land in order to have like the port system we have. Like, it's like something we just don't even really like. We just take for granted it's there. But then you see like these ports in these buildings that are built up right up against the water. Like, if you look around Manhattan, it's like you really think about what did it look like before people started building there? Like, what do islands look like? But you have these bulkheads and all the things, like even like the island that Ellis Island, where you have the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
It looks like a man-made island. They made this island. There's a star fort on it. But I think lots of these cities altogether have been terraformed, and the canal systems and all the things that go into it. So yeah, like that, that's what those world fairs look like. That there had to be, if there was nothing there before, they built all the things that made it all work, including the plumbing and the fountains and all that stuff. That ain't something you do to throw away afterwards. No way, no how.
No, and I want to say in Chicago, that was the largest one, and this was built on an existing swamp. So you first need to dredge that whole swamp,
Right? Yeah, right.
right, just to be able to then start building up the foundation for you to put this all together. I mean, that is an insane undertaking that you would do to then just say, you know what? It's cool. Let's, the last video that I did, I talked about something that I saw in these pictures, and it's the brick ribbon that goes around the concrete walkways for the World's Fairs. So this is like a double down on doing the addition, the original work. We're also going to put a nice brick ribbon that goes around the concrete walkways. I mean, was concrete just super cheap in the 1800s and it was just easy to get? And like, you could, it actually doesn't make a lot of sense if you think about it. Cement mixers, you being able to have like ready-made concrete to pour. I mean, rebar, there's so much that you have to do to be able to put that down. And when I see those buildings on the inside, you can clearly see that there are steel roof trusses. The foundation that you would need for a roof truss to be able to hold up that much weight. I mean, this is like massive amounts of concrete that you need. And one thing that I found interesting in every single one of those fairs, there's never something that shows them, this is where all the horses stay. This is us bringing all the food for the horses. This is all the water for the horses and the mules and the whatever. This is the tent city where everybody lived to be able to do and build all this stuff, right? None of those things can you find, but yet they expect you to just, look at that.
So this is the Spokane, Washington World Fair in 1974. This is the kind of crap that they could do 70, almost to 100 years later. Like you could see, obviously, that is not a real building. That like the biggest thing, like I guess their highlight is some kind of amphitheater looking thing. That's it's like some kind of a tent type deal.
Yeah,
fiberglass or something. Obviously, it's not made of plastic. That's the one thing that obviously stuck in my craw as somebody who's in construction, and we've done lots of plastering and stucco and things like that. And then all these ignorant normies saying, "Oh, it's only made of wood and plaster." And it's like, you don't know what you're even saying. Like, your house is made out of wood, bro. Like, what do you think? That's temporary? So the idea that it was torn down afterward is the only reason it's actually called temporary, because they literally make like skyscrapers made out of wood still, probably because everything's going backwards. But so that's what they did in the 70s. So why couldn't they build something even more impressive than the Columbian exhibition of 1893? Why isn't this better than the the Louisiana Purchase exposition? What year was that?
Ooh, that's a good one.
That was like 18. I mean, obviously that was in the same time period. I believe that was also in the 1890s.
1800s. Actually, that one was 1904.
Okay, 1904. Okay.
1904. Right. Yeah. The 100th anniversary of the purchase of, but that's 1,200 acres, 1,500 buildings. Just knock it right out.
So this was 70 years later. Look at that crap.
It's so unbelievable. It's so ridiculous. I don't know why anybody would ever. I mean,
it's a joke. It's a joke. It's absolutely a joke. Like, look at the. Like, that's all. I mean, I don't know this, but I bet you that tower was already there.
Right.
The most impressive building there was probably already there.
Every World's Fair does.
It's like, look, it's literally tents.
Yeah.
It's like they got like these tents and they got these little wood shacks. So that is 1974. So again, compare the two, and if you didn't know, you would say, like, let's say you made both pictures black and white, and you say which one was done in the 1800s, which one was done in the late 20th century.
Right.
You would not pick this one.
Yeah. Now, if you don't mind, JT, real quick, 1898 Omaha World's Fair. It's
Oh
called the
yeah, that one. Yeah, that one is.
Trans-Mississippi Exposition, right? Just unbelievable. 1898. Yep.
Yeah, I was really shocked by this one. This was one I learned about a little bit later. Was that because I thought this one looks a lot like Chicago.
I mean, so you're telling me that, I mean, look at the size of these buildings, the footprint for this building. Forget all the ancillary stuff. Forget about the reflection pool. Although I think it needs to be paid attention to, because I mean, nothing here says temporary to me. Absolutely nothing.
I think a lot of times when you look at these buildings too, is they look like they got some age to them.
The other thing that
that might not be from that one.
These really old pictures, though, is I watched a video that talked about old school Photoshop, and this was like a real eye opener.
Oh yeah, by the way, it was all lit too.
Yeah,
back when electricity was brand new.
No problem. Just wire the whole thing up.
Back before they mass produced light bulbs. So I guess all these were handmade.
That's a lot of light bulbs.
That's
a lot, right?
I mean, it's just funny too. You just think about like that if they had these things, a lot of times people compare these things to the Olympics, which that would actually make sense if they only had them once every 4 years, and it was one place in the whole world. But you said 1898, so like here's the ones I know, and I'm not actually positive about this, but the world fairs that I know in the 1890s were the Chicago one in 1893. Then I believe that there was one, it was like a midwinter's fair, was in San Francisco. It's another really famous one.
Yep.
And I think it was 1894. And so this is 1898. So like, why would, like, again, San Francisco is really new back then. So, but why are they doing this in Omaha? You know what I'm saying? Because it's like it makes it. You can kind of understand it with our own minds of in 2025. Okay, so when somebody knows they're going to get the Olympics, right? So like, well, yeah. How many years in advance do these cities know they're getting the Olympics? And then they build, and it's one place in the whole world is getting it, and they only do them once every 4 years. So now we're talking about flyover country, and they get this. It's kind of like it was like, do you guys watch those Taylor Sheridan shows? I feel like I don't know, like I'm too far deep into to pull out now, but I watch Yellowstone, and then I watch 1883. And if you watch 1883, you know what it was like to travel back across the western part of the country back then? It looked pretty rough. Everyone dies, basically.
Right.
Everyone dies. It's like your chances of actually getting to where you're going are very slim. And then even if you watch that 1923 show, it's the same way. Like nobody can get anywhere in that show traveling. But yet somebody is going to go to the World Fair. They say millions of people went to the one in Chicago.
Yes.
Right. And then they even say, I want to say that they might even say millions went to San Francisco. So who are the millions of people that are going to Chicago and then the next year going to San Francisco? And then they're going to still go to Omaha? Come on now. Actually, it's funny. Everyone dies of dysentery. Yeah, it's funny. So my daughter was just talking about how they're playing the Oregon Trail, and I really can't help but think. And of course, Val Kilmer just died. Rest in peace, Doc Holliday. That, gosh, Tombstone, epic movie. But now I just can't help but think that those Western movies, that game, the Oregon Trail, these new shows, it's all propaganda. Because This don't make no sense. That right there. That makes no sense. That happening at the exact same time that they're having the shootout at the OK Corral. It just doesn't. It really makes no sense. Yeah, it's like so we're like my kid is still being taught about the Oregon Trail.
Yes.
Why? Because they want us, and that's why they're reprogramming the adults to think, oh no, this stuff, this is what that was the Wild West. Well, Omaha's pretty west. It
Right.
doesn't look too wild to me. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that looks wild? It looks pretty sophisticated to me.
I think if somebody didn't tell you that's where that was, and you just
They would never
said,
believe
"Hey,
you.
it's," they would never believe that that was in America, number one. Look, I mean, all of those walkways. This, uh, I mean, so there's a part of me that I've been thinking about this, right? Especially when thinking about this old school 1800 Photoshop. I'm wondering how many of these pictures these people aren't really there. I know that they're saying that millions of people traveled there, but to your point, it doesn't seem like there was a logistic network in place that would make it easy for millions of people to go and attend these things. So when I see these big pictures, I'm really questioning, are these people all there? Are they really actually there? Or are they just being photoshopped into the picture? Are they just developing multiple negatives on top of each other and placing those people there?
There's Chicago, but Chicago is very similar. Yeah, well, that's actually an excellent point because that when
Look at
you
that.
when you think about it, that there's a lie in here somewhere. Like, what's the truth here? Is because it does not make sense that if we're told it was as difficult to travel as it was to get millions of people to Chicago in the late 1890s. So what if it was? I mean, like, what if they were? Yeah, what if the fairs were just completely made up altogether? It's just that this was part of Chicago. There was never millions of people in these places, and
No.
eventually they destroyed them. But the World Fair thing is literally just a cover story. That's why they were there, and that's why there's pictures of it. So are the people photoshopped into the pictures? There's a really good pic, and I'll have to do a video about this. Maybe I'll have to maybe even do like a reel about it. Or maybe I'll bring it up on a live stream. Maybe I'll turn it into a reel later. But what I found really interesting is that the normies tell us that these are temporary buildings, right? So then you go, but there's interior shots of these buildings. They're not temporary. Like
No.
in no way are they temporary, because some of these buildings, they almost look like they've got steel framing, and you see like these big girders, and they almost look like airplane hangars because they have all these different little exposition events in them, right? They have like these new inventions, supposedly, all these exhibits. And what I found really interesting is that one of the buildings I talk about a lot on here is the old Penn Station in New York City. And so that fits like right along with the kind of the same kind of architecture. It looks Greco-Roman from the outside, but then there's I guess the train station part. If you look at pictures of the inside of it, it looks exactly the same, because there's the Roman kind of looking parts where you have massive columns, but then where the train depot, I guess, was in there. You look up, it looks exactly like it, where you can see the same kind of steel girders and everything. And supposedly that was built in the early 1900s. So it's kind of like I said, the story is so contradictory, because why are you building temporary buildings that look Roman? In the meantime, you're building permanent buildings that look Roman at the same time. So it's
Right.
like, from us, it seems like a novelty to say, oh, wow, they built that place up to look like ancient Rome or Paris or something. Meanwhile, they're building those buildings at the same time. So why would they need to build temporary buildings that look like real buildings that they're building down the street?
Or on the fair site, because every single one of these fairs has at least one or two buildings that
Yeah.
they were designed to be permanent. but yet there's a whole bunch of other buildings. Like, come on, are we serious that anybody would realistically, like, you have to surrender all your critical faculties to believe that that would be something that's built temporary? It doesn't make sense.
I
It
said
doesn't make sense. Yeah.
I get frustrated with people. That's what I said. Like every now and then I wade into the comment sections in my videos, and people are really, I mean, people like really buy that story. Let me just look at that bridge. It would take them a year to build the bridge now.
Right. Let alone that entire building. I mean, the archway in the front of that thing, it kind of reminds me of the arches that are like in every city, right? It seems like the middle of every city has one of the massive arches that are there. I don't know, they call that like the Arc de Triomphe, right? But look at the size.
That building right there, I don't care if it was made of paper, I don't care if it was made of paper mache. That building is got so many unique details on it. It's like it's so preposterous that that's a fake build. Like, that's not a real building.
I mean, and to your point before about the steel girders, I guarantee you the inside of that building, you can find pictures of steel girders holding up that roof. There's no way that roof, that curved roof area right there, is being held up. And maybe this is part of it. Maybe what you have to do is you just have to start with really, really massive lies. And then it's a lot easier for you to always interject a new lie into the history. Because if I can get you to believe that that's a temporary building, that's laughable,
you'll believe anything.
You'll believe anything, right? And like, I was thinking about this when I was looking at Buffalo. Buffalo gets really, really cold. They have brutal winters. So you're telling me that they did all of this work, and then the winter came.
Yeah. They don't have
to work. All these lath and plaster buildings were okay?
They'd only be able to work about half the year. Yeah, they would not. Again, like, I think that's My Lunch Break has done a lot of good videos about that, where they talk about like logistics of things like that. Like that, again, I mentioned the Empire State Building was just trying to transport all the materials to get it there. They're talking about doing horse and carts across, like, in the wintertime in Chicago to get all the materials there. And one thing you were saying about like having steel girders and steel beams, like the thing that people really don't understand, that have no construction background, is that this building, whether it was like a movie set, it's really big. And so whether even the materials are the cheapest materials they have today, we use the cheapest materials. That would take so much. That thing would be so heavy. So because it's heavy, you need something that can support all the weight, because I don't care if you're going to demo it in 6 months. If it was made to stand up for one day, it has to be strong. It'd have to be strong enough to carry all the weight. That thing looks like it weighs, I don't know, like 1 billion pounds. So again, like, say, like, so it can't be temporary.
No,
it can't. It has to be able to support the weight. So the whole idea, like, that's almost just like an oxymoron, a temporary building. It's a building or it's not a building.
And this was probably in an area that used to be a swamp, JT, right? So like you're also putting that much weight on an area that used to be a swamp that you just dredged out. I mean, come on.
Everything perfectly level and immaculate. That's another thing. I want to say that the pictures of the one building, I want to say it's it's like the Arts and History Museum or Arts and something Museum. That's the one of the buildings that was left over in Chicago. When you see the old pictures of it, there was a giant like lake, like pond in front of it, and now it's all filled in. Have you seen that?
No.
Yeah, I think it's all filled in. So like, yeah, these people are just the worst. So then not only do they have all these epic ponds and fountains and stuff like that, they literally just filled them all in with dirt later. I wonder if they filled it in with some of the buildings they destroyed.
And just dumped all of the stuff in there.
Would have been a lot of work. It would have been a lot of work to get rid of all that stuff.
Yeah, but if you just dumped it all there, then made it a state park or whatever, right? Nobody would go mess with it. Nobody would go dig there.
This building deserves its own video. Like, just it's like funny. It can't even fit in this picture.
No, no. I mean, it's acres of space inside. I mean,
and this is a different one.
Unbelievable.
So that's not even the same building. I mean, like, again, they're all these buildings.
Okay, but all those walkways, those are all concrete. Where did all this material come from?
No.
Unreal. Honestly, I think people need to like check out old school Photoshop because it's incredible. Everybody looks at that picture of the guys building New York and they're having lunch on that
yeah, the more I think about that, it's like we were always blown away by
look at that.
Yeah, the idea that these people were like just being really flippant about being 100 stories up, just eating their lunch on a beam. I gotta be honest, I've been on like I've been on a scaffolding about like 6 flights high. I'm not really crazy about heights. When it gets windy up there, man, it is scary.
Yeah,
I worked up in like on the downtown Norfolk. Actually, it might have been like 13 floors up, and we were working on the water, and it was in the wintertime, so you're already cold and stiff, and the wind blows. Man, it sucks. I'm telling you, like, if you ever want to know what it's like to do like real men's work, build scaffold and tear scaffold down. It is not fun. It is really scary. And of course, back in those days, maybe OSHA was a little more lenient, or we just didn't follow the guidelines, but it was really sketchy.
The San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge in Pennsylvania, they have Bethlehem Steel, and Bethlehem Steel had like 6 smeltering plants, but basically they, for over 4 years made the steel that was needed to build just that bridge.
Gosh.
So where was all this steel being produced that went to all these various places? Where did all that steel actually get made? Where's all the steel that was in the railroad tracks, right? Like, it's a much bigger logistical challenge than I think people really realize, that if modern day stuff takes 4 years for you to produce the steel, get it from point A to point B, and then build a bridge. Do you have any idea how long it would take you to build all and make the steel for this stuff? No way.
That place it's a lie. That's Shalaga is what that is. I mean, like, here's a picture of the inside of it. Look, see? This is what I'm talking about. It's not temporary. Like I said, you just look at the picture, you can tell it's not temporary right there. They said it's made of wood and plaster. It's not. Look, that's metal. That's steel. So you got any more lies you want to tell me? It's like I can just see from the picture. It's like your own story is not consistent.
Right. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And this was what I was trying to get at earlier with giving people a historical narrative, right? This Austrian exhibit, right? I don't know. Did they go and find all of these items from Austria? Did they just decide what they were going to put in here? I'm just trying to understand like where all of this came from. I mean, it's
that's a good point. Like, you're talking about the old school Photoshop, and I've looked into that a little bit. But just look at this picture here. Are those soldiers on the left, are they supposed to be like little statues or mannequins? Because if they're not, they definitely look like they're photoshopped in,
right,
because they don't look real at
all. I've
all.
also noticed that no one ever has a discernible face. Like no one really has like a face that you can make out usually in these pictures. And it seemed like they perfected capturing people either in a walk or just staring off into the distance. But it seems like it's like copies of those people in those different poses over and over again that you see in all these images.
Yeah, everyone looks real stupid in
right?
the pictures. They look like they're lost. Again, Definitely not temporary. That's definitely steel holding
Yeah.
that building up.
Yeah, look at the inside of this stuff. There's no way that that's a temporary building. You have no idea how much steel that is. It's
Yeah.
an insane amount of steel.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like you you could not hold up one of these buildings unless it had steel. So, I mean, so like obviously that fits. Look how big it is. It's got buildings inside the
Inside
building.
of it.
It's like so they said they built a certain amount of buildings, but they actually built buildings inside them.
Buildings,
Like
yeah.
normal size buildings that are inside the buildings.
This isn't just doubling down. This is like triple, quadrupling down on work, right? Like this is there's just so much that you would have to do this. I mean, it really makes it
Yeah, you'd have to be like there had to be somebody there that says, "What, you want buildings inside of it too? Like, you know how long that's going to take?" It's like, yeah, all these exhibits. I mean, it's like it's funny just to think about. They say they built the whole thing in that short amount of time. Just getting everything to the place would mean like just filling these buildings up. Yeah,
yeah.
again, like again, the camera is not. Was not a new invention at that point. And why? So why are these all just illustrations?
And a lot
Unless
and I,
unless like what you're saying is like that maybe they're illustrations because I'm not even sure where that's from, but maybe they're illustrations because if there wasn't a million people in these places, this is made up.
no. No, I don't believe that this really happened. I really question some of these photos now because like, I've gone to, I've done the trade show floor in Vegas, and like Freeman and Associates, they're like a city of people that move around all the stuff inside of these convention centers. And I know how long that takes for them to build. I mean, some of these trade shows, they'll spend like $100,000 building a booth for whatever company to be able to put on their show, right? But now yeah, just look at the amount of steel that's inside of there.
Not one bit of wood in that place. It's all a lot. I mean, it's again, it's like infuriating. I mean, it's like it's obviously confirmation of all the things I've already looked into. But yeah, like that, you can't make these buildings out of wood.
It wouldn't happen, and like just the fountains themselves, and you putting in the plumbing to be able to do the fountains. This, where's that all coming from? Um,
No, again, like this, the stories. I guess that's why the story is very provably a lie, is because you like the logistics of shows like 1883, 1923. They're trying to say that's accurate, accurate period piece.
right.
Okay, so why is it so easy to transport the materials? And somebody say, "Oh, haven't you heard of the trains, bro?" And it's like, "Yeah, I've heard of the trains, but how do they get how do I get the materials from the trains to the building site? How do they get the materials to the trains? Donkeys, horses, carts, and how do they put the stuff up? Elbow grease and lots of dudes.
No
Who
cranes. No,
yeah, lots of dudes. It's like I said, it's always I think it's very comparable to the stories about how they built the pyramids and stuff like that. It's like, well, they're there, so somebody did it, and that's good enough for some people. It's not good enough for people like me because I don't believe. I'm tired of listening to them. They're all full of it.
yeah, it's there is a part of me that's almost like, man, I wish at least some of this was still here, because I would have loved to have gone and actually seen this myself. I mean, it just looks incredible. So somebody actually got a chance to see it, and I've seen a lot of those old world pictures where they have like the mooring station that's at the top of these skyscrapers, and then being able to have like a blimp or something be able to dock with it. And so, could it be, right? Just wild speculation here, but a group of people got on those things and started going around to be able to explore this new world, supposedly. And these were some of the gems that they found, and decided, well, we got to figure out what to do with all this stuff, because it's
Yeah, I think. I can buy that. I mean, I think that, to me, what I believe, based on what I've learned, is that I think that, again, I think those buildings, a lot of them were Roman, and that's why a lot of them maybe didn't have bathrooms, and that's why a lot of them. Have you ever seen, like, maybe pull up this one building, and we probably got to end here soon.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
think it's really interesting is the Library of Congress. This is a good example. I checked this out last year, and there's a lot of the old world buildings. Okay, let's just check this building out real quick. So we'll just look at the outside of this, and if you look at it, it makes sense that, like, these buildings were built before, like, modern electricity, because
Right,
there's windows everywhere. Like, there's no part of the building where you can't get natural light into it.
right,
Maybe they did have, maybe they did have free energy. Maybe they did have other ways to light these places, but it's more expensive to build a building like that than it is to just build a bigger roof and more floors,
right.
to build all that exterior wall, because that exterior wall is obviously more expensive, all that stone. But that's how they built those buildings. And I don't know, I think it's kind of funny to think, like, that maybe you know, that's why the buildings were eventually maybe they would, besides it does not fit the narrative, maybe they would think that it's
Yeah,
it's not practical to keep it, because, yeah, like, because we have modern comforts, we're trying to heat places and we're trying to light them, and they can't really do anything with them. Maybe because there was a different technology that was no longer available. So it was better just to destroy these buildings, because they couldn't do anything with them. I
right.
mean, obviously they saved a lot of them, but it was probably super expensive to probably fix them, to make them modern, to make them for today.
Yeah, there's also a part of me that thinks that maybe whatever technology was there for energy, there was not going to be a way for them to monetize that.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? So let's just get rid of that stuff. And I mean, I mean, this is over the top for you're telling me that this is what people decided to do with little government?
Yeah, this is the library. This is a library. Like I said, I went into that room, and it was like the acoustics in this place. When you turn the page, everybody in the
You
whole
hear it.
library heard you. Everyone heard it.
Yeah.
It's not made to be quiet. It's made for sound to go through that place. And every bit of that building has got something in there. Like I said, it's unreal. With that being said, I don't buy it. I don't buy the story for 1 second. It doesn't sound like Short Season John believes it either. So he's in good company. But anyways, John, is there anything else you want to leave the people with? Well, first off, I want to thank John for showing up today. He came up on short notice. Appreciate it, John. John is really close to 1,000 subs, and I told him today. I said, because I know my audience are the best. Sub to John's channel. Get him to 1,000 before the end of the day. I think that would be epic. I'm sure that would make John very happy. And but yeah. Anyways, John, do you have anything else you want to close with?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, thanks for having me on again. I really enjoy these. The community's awesome. And I look forward to doing more videos, helping people, realize that there's a bunch of lies that are around them, and maybe the one thing that they haven't looked into, the Bible might actually be time well spent, right? So, that's really all I have. I appreciate the time. Like I said, names linked in the in the live stream, I'm sure, there in the description. So
Let me post the link real quick before we close. So here you go, guys. This is. Oh shoot! I mean to do that. I'll pin this real quick. Yeah. So you guys, check out John's channel. He's obviously doing a lot of this research. I'm sure you guys, he'd probably, if you guys want him to look into more world fairs, I'm sure he'd probably be down for that. I can't, I honestly, I really do enjoy this. I know I've done a few of these where I went on with old world exploration and we talked about some of the stuff and it just, I can't get in. It's so stupid. I guess I'm the kind of guy that watches a movie and I hate it. And I spend the next 2 hours reading reviews that all say it's stupid. Like that's the kind of guy that I am. That's the kind of guy that I've always been. So me, I can endlessly look at these pictures and be impressed and also say, this story is so dumb. I haven't got tired of doing it yet. So anyways, guys, I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Yeah, once again, check out John's channel, link pinned up there. And yeah, look out for JT's mixtape. I'm got episode number 24 coming up on Monday. I got to edit it now. But it should be edited by Monday. Also, yeah, check out once again. I got like a real official podcast now. I got a real sponsor. Can you believe that? So yeah, check out Modern Roots Life. They're linked in the description as well. Let them know that JT sent you. And yeah, like try to get healthy and support good Christian brothers in this community. So I appreciate you guys. God bless y'all. All right.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was fun. That was good. I think it flowed pretty well. We didn't